Hey everyone! Ever wondered what makes you actually you? It's a tiny little superheroes called cells. So what exactly is a cell? Think of a cell as a super tiny factory, usually too small to see without the microscope. Cells are the basic building blocks of life. Every plant, animal, bacteria, or even that mold on your bread is made up of cells. They're like tiny cities with specialized areas for different jobs, all working together to keep the organism alive and kicking. Cool, right? And even though they're small, what happens inside them is mind-blowing complex. Now let's take a closer look at the overall structure of a typical eukaryote cell. That's the type of cell that makes up humans, animals, plants, and fungi. Imagine a cell as a tiny bubble city, filled with jelly, like cytoplasm, floating organelles, and busy little workers running around. At the very outside, the cell membranes warps everything up, like the city walls. It protects the cell, controls what enters and leaves, and communicates with neighboring cells. Some cells, like plant cells, have an extra layer called a cell wall, like a fortified city wall. Inside the city, the cytoplasm is the open space or streets where organelles move around. Floating in the cytoplasm are the important parts like nucleus, the city hall or control center, mitochondria is the power plants, ribosome, Golgi are the factories, and lysosome, the waste management system. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Not all cells are the same. In the human body alone, we have over 200 different types of cells, each specialized for a unique job. Let me give you a few examples. Muscle cells. These are the power filters. They contract and relax so you can move, run, and even smile. Red blood cells. Tiny delivery trucks carrying oxygen to every part of your body. They don't even have nucleus to make more room for oxygen. Nerve cells. The messengers sending electric signals at lightning speed so your brain can talk to your body. Epithelial cells. The city walls of your body, forming skin and lining organs to protect and absorb nutrients. White blood cells. The police and army, fighting off infections and keeping you healthy. Stem cells, the ultimate interns. They can transform to almost any cell type your body needs. So basically your body is a giant city made of trillions of different types of little cities, all specialized and working together. And yet most of them share the same basic blueprint, the cell structure we just described. Next up is the cytoplasm, the jelly-like substance that fills most of the cell. Think of it as the playground, street, and workplace all rolled into one. It's mostly water, but it's also packed with salts, nutrients, enzymes, and lots of tiny molecules that the cell needs to survive and function. Here's why the cytoplasm is super important. It holds everything in place. All the organelles float in the cytoplasm, kind of like a boat in a calm lake. It keeps them in position, so they can do their jobs efficiently. Facilitates movement and transport. Cytoplasm isn't just a static gel. It flows gently in a process called cytoplasmic streaming. This helps move nutrients, proteins, and other molecules from one part of the cell to another. Imagine little delivery trucks crushing along the streets of the city. Site for chemical reactions. Many of the cell's essential chemical reactions happen here. Enzymes dissolve in the cytoplasm, speed up reactions that produce energy, build molecules, and break down waste. Protect organelles. Act like the cytoplasm cushion. If the cell gets a bump or jolt, organelles don't crush into each other. It's like shock-absorbing gel in a high-tech city. Even though the cytoplasm looks simple under a microscope, it's actually highly organized with a network of fibers and filaments that guide movement and shape. So it's not just a Jew. Its structure shows that keeps the cell alive and kicking. Nucleus, the brain and control center of the cell. Now let's talk about the nucleus, the ultimate VIP of the cell. If the cell were a city, the nucleus would be City Hall or the CEO office, where all the big decisions are made. Here's what makes the nucleus so important. It holds the DNA. DNA is the cell's instructions manual. It tells the cell what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Every action in the cell, from making proteins to growing and dividing, starts here. Think of a DNA as a library full of blueprints for everything the cell needs. Nucleus is the ribosome factory. Inside the nucleus is a little structure called the nucleus. Its job is to make ribosomes, which are the protein factories of the cell. So basically, the nucleus is like a tiny production plant inside the city hall. Nuclear envelope. the security gate. The nucleus is surrounded by a double membrane called the nuclear envelope, with tiny pores acting as security checkpoints. These pores carefully control what goes in and out. Messenger RNA exit to deliver instructions to ribosome, while proteins and other molecules needed inside enter. Chromatin, the organelles library. DNA isn't just floating around randomly. It's warped around proteins to form chromatin, like neatly shelved books in a library. When the cell needs to divide, chromatin condenses into visible chromosomes, which carry genetic information to the next generation of cells. The nucleus may only take up about 10% of the cell's volume, but it controls everything happening in the other 19%, like a tiny mastermind behind the bustling metropolis. Mitochondria, the tiny energy factories of the cell. If the cell is a city, mitochondria are the power plants keeping the light on and the engines running. Without them, nothing moves literally. Here's what makes mitochondria so fascinating. First, it's ATP production, cellular fuel. Mitochondria take nutrients like glucose and oxygen and convert them into ATP, the energy currency of the cell. Think of ATP as a tiny rechargeable batteries that power every machine, process, and movement inside a cell. Not ATP, not energy, the cell literally shuts down. Second, double membranes. Security and efficiency. Mitochondria have two membranes. An outer membrane is a protective wall, and a fluted inner membrane that increases the surface area. Why flutes? More surface area means more space for energy-producing chemical reactions. Basically, a bigger factory floor without taking up more room. Third, own DNA. Mini-city with independence. Mitochondria have their own DNA, separate from the nucleus. This allows them to replace independently and even make some of their own proteins. Each mitochondria is like a literal power plant with its own mini blueprint, engineer, and tools. Mitochondria don't just produce energy. They also help the cell, signaling growth and even deciding when a cell should die. Think of them as energy factories that also function as quality control centers, making sure the city doesn't go wrong. The number of mitochondria varies depending on the cell type. Muscle cells have tons of mitochondria because they need a lot of energy to keep moving, while some skin cells need far fewer. Next up, ribosomes, the hard-working little factories of the cell. If mitochondria are the power plants, ribosomes are the construction sites where proteins, the cell tools, machines, and building materials are made. Here's the breakdown. First, what ribosomes do. Ribosomes read instructions from the DNA and assemble amino acids in the correct order to make proteins. Proteins are essential for almost everything in the cell: enzymes, structural support, signals, transporters, and more. Without ribosomes, the cell would literally have nothing to work with. Second, where ribosomes lives. Ribosomes can float freely in the cytoplasm, making proteins that stay inside the cell, or they can attach to the raw endoplasmic reticulum, producing proteins that will be exported out of the cell or sent to the cell membranes. Think of it like two types of factories, one for local supplies, one for shipping products outside. Third, size and simplicity. Ribosomes are tiny, much smaller than mitochondria, and they don't have membranes. Despite their size, they are super efficient, like tiny pop-up factories working 24 hours inside the cell city. Imagine a construction site. The DNA is the blueprint, mRNA is the format giving instructions, and the ribosome is the team of workers assembling the product. Whether it's bridge, a machine, or enzymes, or signal flag. Cells can have millions of ribosomes, depending on how active they are. Liver cells, for example, are packed with ribosomes, because they produce tons of proteins and enzymes for metabolism. Next on our cell tours is the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. Think of the ER as the cell's industrial complex or assembly line, where materials are made, modified, and prepared to delivery. The ER comes in two flavors, raw ER and smooth ER. Let's break it down. The raw ER is covered with ribosomes, which makes it raw under a microscope. It builds and modifies proteins, especially those that will leave the cell or become part of the cell membranes. Imagine a factory line where raw materials come in. like amino acids. Workers, like ribosomes, assemble them into final products as proteins, and the supervisor, ER enzymes, check quality before shipping. Raw ER also flutes proteins into their proper CD shape, because a misfolded protein is like a broken gadget that won't work. Unlike raw ER, the smooth ER has no ribosomes, so it looks smooth. It's in charge of making lipids, detoxifying harmful chemicals, and storing calcium for signaling in some cells. Think of smooth ER as a chemical factory and recycling plant, producing fats, breaking down toxins, and keeping essential supplies in stock. In liver cells, smooth ER detoxifies alcohol and drugs. In muscle cells, it stores calcium for muscles contraction. The ER is also like a highway network inside the cell, connecting the nucleus to the Golgi apparatus and other organelles. Protein and lipids travel along the ER corridors to reach their destination efficiently. It's like a conveyor belt system in a giant factory city, moving products from assembly to shopping. Some cells, like pancreatic cells, have an enormous ER because they need to produce and secrete tons of proteins like digestive enzymes. The ER is not just a factory, it's essential for cell survival, communication, and organization. Now let's meet the Golgi apparatus, the cell's packaging and shipping center. If the ER is the factory, the Golgi is where products are finished, labeled, and sent to their destination. The Golgi looks like a stack of flattened pancakes or shells, called cisternia. Even though it looks simple, it's highly organized hump that receive, modify, stores, and ship materials from the ER. The main functions: first, modifying protein and lipids. Protein and lipids made in ER are often not ready to work immediately. The Golgi modifies them, like adding sugar chains, phosphate groups, or the tags, so they can function properly or be recognized by other cells. It's like the gift warping department in a factory, adding labels, decoration, or final touches before shipping. Second, storing and packaging. The Golgi sorts materials depending on where they need to go: inside the cell, to the membranes, or outside the cell. Like the post office center, it decides whether your package goes next door or across the country. Third, vesicle formation. After storing, the Golgi packages proteins and lipids into vesicle, tiny bubble-like containers to deliver them safely. Think of vesicles as delivery trucks carrying packages to their exact address, creating lysosomes. Some Golgi vesicles become lysosomes, the cell garbage disposal unit, so the Golgi is indirectly helping clean the city too. Cells with heavy secretion activity, like pancreatic cells or nerve cells, have a very large and active Golgi. The Golgi is not just a shipping center, it's critical for communication, delivery, and quality control in the cell. Next up is the cytoskeleton, the cell's internal skeleton, road network, and construction crew all in one. If the cell is a city, the cytoskeleton is the infrastructure that gives the city shape, support, and traffic control. This cytoskeleton is made of three main types of protein fiber: microfilaments, thin, flexible fiber that supports cell shape and allow it to change or move. They also help the cell division and movement. Think of microfilaments as the flexible scaffolding around the building, allowing workers to climb and adjust the structure. 2. Microtubules, thick, hollow tubes that act as railways inside the cell. They help transport organelles and vesicles, and also form the spindle fibers that pull chromosomes apart during cell division. Microtubules are like highways with a truck moving cargo efficiently around the city. 3. Intermediate filament, rope-like fiber that provide mechanical strength to the cell. They're more permanent than microfilaments and microtubules. These are like steel beams in a building. They keep everything stable, even under stress. Main functions. First, maintaining cell shape. Without the cytoskeleton, a cell would be like a water balloon, all squishy and shapeless. Second, supports movement. Cells like white blood cells crawl using cytoskeleton fibers. The cytoskeleton is the cell's leg and crane system, allowing to move and transport cargo. Third, transport. Organelles, vesicles, and even protein travels along microtubules like packages on conveyor belt. Fifth, cell division. During mitosis, the cytoskeleton forms the spindle apparatus to pull chromosome into two new cells. The cytoskeleton isn't static. It's constantly rebuilding and reorganizing based on the cell's needs. It also plays a role in signaling, letting the cell sense its environment and respond. Up until now, we have talked about the main organelles that almost every cell has. But some cells have extra players specialized for certain tasks like VIP departments in our cell city. Let's check them out. A. Chloroplast in plant cells. Found in plant cells and some algae, not in human. Photosynthesis turning sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide into sugar and oxygen. Chloroplasts are like solar plants and sugar factories combined. They also have their own DNA, like mitochondria, making them semi-independent mini-factories. B. Vacuoles. Storage warehouse. Vacuoles are large storage compartments inside cells. Store water, nutrients, waste, or other molecules. Plant cells usually have one giant central vacuole that helps keep the cell rigid. Animal cells have smaller vacuoles. Think of vacuoles as warehouses or storage tank, keeping supplies safe until they're needed. Detox center. Small organelles filled with enzymes that break down toxic substances like hydrogen peroxide. Detoxifying chemicals break down fatty acids and protect the cell. They're like hazard disposal units in the city, safely removing dangerous waste. Cilia and flagella. The movers. Found in some animal cells. Movements of the cell itself or movement of fluids around the cell. Sperm cells use a flagellum to swim. Cells lining your airway using to move mucus. Tiny motors or auras propelling the cell or cleaning streets in the cell city. E. Centrosomes and centrosols. Found in animal cells, not plants. Organize microtubules during cell division, helping chromosomes split evenly. The city planning office, ensuring roads and the livers are perfectly coordinated during a city expansion. These organelles aren't in every cell, but specialize the cell for a certain job. For example, muscle cells have tonus mitochondria for energy, liver cells has a huge smooth ER for detox, plant leaf cells have chloroplasts to harvest sunlight. It's like custom department in a city, added only where needed. If you enjoyed exploring the cell universe, hit that like button, subscribe for more mind-blowing science, and comment below which organelles would you be if you were the cell.